Okay, this morning I'm going to be talking a little bit about the zodiac as a religious symbol. And first, I want to say that we're coming up on Easter very soon. And for those who are not aware, Easter is, in fact, an astrological holiday. The the formula for figuring out when Easter comes every year, for those who are not aware, most people probably recognize the fact that it doesn't always happen on the same day. It's a range of dates, and the formula for figuring out when Easter is going to be is pretty simple. So you figure out when the first full moon of the season is, which is the full moon in Libra, and then you find the first Sunday after that full moon, and that will give you Easter. Very simple, but it's a lunar and solar holiday. It's a holiday that has input both from the sun and from the moon. So this is a very strong indication that we are talking about something astrological, and it has something to do with the god and the goddess. So just to lead in with that, the topic that I want to talk about today is the religious zodiac. Now, for most astrologers who are out there, they want to be legitimate. They want to be as scientific as possible. They want astrology to be thought of as something that's not dependent upon religion and is far away from that. It's about the stars. It's about how the stars move, and it's therefore a science, and we should not be thinking about religion. Now that is normal psychological reaction. It's what everybody generally thinks, because religion is something that's very personal to people. But if we take a step back from that and understand that the zodiac actually was a religious symbol, it was a very, very, very hallowed religious symbol to the early Christians and to Jews. There were many, many, many zodiacs on the floor in tile of several synagogues that have been discovered in Israel and other places. The zodiac was a particular religious symbol to a sect of Jews known as the Nazarenes. This would not be a recognizable type of Judaism to today's Orthodox or other Judaism. It's quite different. Looked a lot more like, it had a great deal more input from mystery cults, and it looked quite pagan compared to modern ideas. And Christianity, there were zodiacs in churches up until about the 12th century. There's a few examples of monasteries in Greece and other places that have zodiacs on their walls or other places. So this symbol was quite central to early Christianity. And just to cut to the chase, if you understand that Jesus is a dying and rising God, and the cross is actually the cross of the zodiac, meaning the equinoctial points and the solstitial points, it is a zodiac with the dying and rising God inside of it. And that is actually how Jesus and Mary in many places were depicted in the zodiac. They were figures inside of the wheel. Him being a solar figure and her being a lunar figure. So this was not contrary in any way to early Christianity. This was actually a very seminal part of Christianity because it tells a story of light and dark. The zodiac can only be understood as primarily a religious symbol. It's a cosmological symbol that shows a balance of light and dark, and the 4 points are liminal points. They're extremely important liminal points. Now, the fact that most modern astrologers don't want to go there is, it makes a great deal of sense. As I said, this is something you want to divorce yourself from any type of religious connotations, because it could, imply sectarianism. And we also know that religious, modern religion has flipped the script, so that for them, the zodiac is generally considered to be a anathema. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. The religions don't want it to be part of their tradition, even though it is. And modern people want to be thought of as scientific and objective and not tied up in something that's superstitious, or based on things that are much more that aren't as objective as what we want to, the standard that we want to set. So the problem we're left with is that the actual zodiac is a religious symbol, and it functions because it's a actual religious symbol, because it's actually telling the story of light and dark. And this works on so many levels that it's actually almost frightening how profound the zodiac is once one starts digging into it, into its structures, and one sees that the actual techniques that are used by astrologers are based on something much, much simpler. So this is something that I've explored at great depth, and I'm still feeling like I'm only scratching the surface of what's really going on here. If astrologers are willing to back away from some of the things that they've accepted to be sort of dogma now, so they, if you know Hellenistic astrology, it said you shouldn't confuse the houses with the signs, and that is very true. However, the reason is that was for horoscopic astrology and not for the religious or cosmological astrology. Modern astrologers have gone back and said, wow, yeah, this is the natural zodiac, which puts, it starts at Aries and goes around, is actually quite brilliant. But if you connect it too tightly to the houses, then you have a problem when you're doing charts, if you're doing readings. So we need to do both things now, which is the modern astrologers generally haven't studied the techniques very well. They're often motivated by a belief in sort of New Age-ish kind of things, which are spurious and not very well thought out in terms of religious thought. We have a lot of people who, probably not many atheists are going to be practicing astrology, but the atheistic world is caught up in the idea that the zodiac can't be true because of the precession of the equinoxes, and the sidereal zodiac is the only thing that could work because the signs are the constellations, and that's dumb. That's just stupid. That's something that doesn't take into account the actual beliefs of the people who created the zodiac. Astrologers are aware of the precession of the equinoxes, and they're aware where the fixed stars are. And we also get into problems too with astrologers who use bisected houses, and then they don't really understand what rulership means, and how that impacts the rulers of the signs are extremely important. They're not something little add-on kind of thing that you can't, if you just are focused on houses and you don't understand rulership, then there's a big problem there. So in any case, this is something I've been trying to get across, and it's just become so obvious to me now that we need to sort of back away from horoscopic astrology in order to understand horoscopic astrology. You have to back away from it for a little bit to understand what its origins are, because the religious aspects of it are they're not Christian, they're not Jewish, they're universal. They're based on a natural law of dark and light, masculine and feminine, and hermetic principles that are extremely useful and extremely neutral, but they don't allow for the violation of natural law. You can't pretend that these things aren't there and have this whole thing make sense. So I have put together a class about this. I'm going to be launching that very soon, and anybody who's really interested in that, you can get in touch with me. But this is my Easter and Equinox message for everybody.